All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here with our preview and prediction for the 2025 Miami Hurricanes. Looking at this coaching staff, Mario Cristobal back for his fourth season as lead man, Shannon Dawson, third year in role of offensive coordinator, and a new defensive coordinator arrives in Corey Heatherman, spending last season at Minnesota. Phenomenal offseason for the Canes, third-ranked total class, top 15 on the high school ranks. 10-3 last year, losing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. But we all know they were certainly capable of winning a national championship. And we start with the Miami offense, and they're the sole reason why they would have had a great shot in the playoffs if they would have made it there. Due to Cam Ward in this high-flying offense, you can see the numbers there, first in scoring, first in yards per game. They put on absolute clinics on a weekly basis last year, Nick, and it was pretty much all for nothing at the end of the day as they ended up in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and ended up losing that game as well. Now you go into 2025, quarterback was a big uncertainty for them, but a bit of a blessing for them. Carson Beck for Georgia goes out with an injury in the Sugar Bowl, decides to transfer out of the program. Now he ends up at Miami. Now this is a guy that certainly lowered his draft stock last year where he was expected to be what Cam Ward was. And that was a Heisman finalist, a guy who went number one in the draft. Now he finds himself in the 305. And this is a guy, though, who can still really rip the football. Intermediate velocity checks out. When he's in rhythm, he's just perfect. Accuracy, feet, and eyes are all in sync when he's clicking. Really good pocket presence. Always in tune off of play action. He throws with great anticipation, but at times can be late downfield. I think his intermediate and deep accuracy can be sporadic. Had plenty of mental lapses in 2024, showcased inconsistent ball placement and accuracy, was also heavily turnover prone. Was really good the last three regular season games, though. I know he was sluggish in Atlanta before he exited for the Dogs. I know there's a lot to be negative about, but this is also a guy who no one's talking about this offseason, Nick, and I understand it's for good reason. But again, if you saw how he played the cap off the regular season, he was playing like one of the top quarterbacks in the country. I still think that potential is there, and I think Beck is being significantly undervalued for the Hurricanes.
I tend to agree that Beck is being undervalued for this Miami team. I still think he's an incredibly talented player with high upside that you can plug into this offense to get success. Miami continues to roll the dice on transfer quarterbacks, and I don't blame them for bringing in a guy like Beck who has so much high upside potential that could be really solid for your team. When you look at some of those games that you're mentioning at the tail end of the season, particularly the three games against Tennessee, UMass, and Georgia Tech. Against Georgia Tech, 300 yards passing, 5 touchdowns in that one, 65% comp rate. Against UMass, similar number, 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns in that game. Against Tennessee, 350 and 2 scores in that one. So he was really solid there, 300 plus, in those last couple of games there. Before that, though, there were some struggles, right? The game against Ole Miss, he did not look like himself. 186 and 1 interception, no touchdowns. Brutal day. At Florida, against Florida, had 3 interceptions in that game. Still had 300 yards and 2 scores, but the 3 interceptions is a big problem. Against Texas, the first matchup against them, 175, 3 picks, no touchdowns. Absolutely brutal. Against Alabama, that first half was a first half to forget. 3 interceptions. Ended up with 439 and 3 scores, but they were playing from behind in that game. He looked flawless against Clemson, 275 and 2 scores in that one. So very inconsistent, very hit or miss. The turnovers were the biggest problem for me last year. I mean, the turnover stuff is just absolutely crazy last year. 12 interceptions is an incredibly high number for a quarterback of his caliber. He doubled his interception number from year to year and really only attempted about 30 more passes last year. He saw a massive decrease in comp rate as well, ended up going down 8% from 2023 to 2024, which is not great, and he had 500 less yards. Can you get the 2023 version of Carson Beck? I think Miami fans would be absolutely thrilled with that, and this would also be the top passing and scoring offense in the nation again. If you get the 2024 version of Carson Beck, this offense may look sluggish, they may make mistakes, and may be uncomfortable. He also had 14 fumbles last year for Georgia, which I think is a big, important key stat in that regard. He only had 8 in 2023. Although he did recover a fair few of those in both seasons. Overall, this is a quarterback that's got high upside potential. The frame is phenomenal. The arm strength is phenomenal. The pocket awareness is really good. 6'4", 220. If he can reach that 2023 levels where he had success in the past, this offense can get back to levels again last year where we were scoring 40-plus points per game and well over 500 yards per game.
And of course, his supporting cast at Georgia last year wasn't all that great for him. I think they led the nation in drops or something like that. That starting trio was abysmal. The offensive line is very inconsistent. You've seen them really show up more against Georgia Tech and Tennessee late in the year. He was great in those games, especially against a good volunteer defense. So I think Beck's going to do wonders here for Miami. He's going to have a great supporting cast to do things with as well. So we move to the wide receivers. C.J. Daniels had a quality 450-yard season last year for LSU. Didn't score a touchdown, though. Had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns back in 23 for Liberty as a big downfield playmaker. playmaker, so a bit of a forgotten player as well. Who's going to be a focal point, unlike last year, in a crowded room for LSU. The add of Tony Johnson from Cincinnati. Elite hands, has some good speed, excited for the volume he's going to get in this offense. Keelan Marion wasn't all that productive as a starter, but was a highly valuable player in special teams for BYU. They return a true sophomore, Josiah Trader, who had a big score in the bowl game. Didn't see much time before that. Nye Carr, former top 100 prospect in last year's class. Trader himself was ranked 70th overall in that same class. Chance Robinson, 185th overall. So a lot of young talent here that are looking to get some reps, some nice transfers. I think altogether this is a great room. Also have a third-year guy in Ray Joseph. Alex Bauman from Tulane. He's been a touchdown machine with 12 scores over the last 2 years. He's going to be a great tight end for them. He's in a battle with Elijah Lofton, who himself, had 150 yards on 9 grabs last season, being the 10th ranked tight end in the class of 2024. I think this is an elite pass-catching group. Maybe no true number one guy you can point to be a great, versatile player and leader. But I think that the talent speaks volumes. I think they're deep, and I think Beck is going to do great with this receiving core.
I think you're lacking that true number one that would stand out, like Xavier Restropro was last year for this team. I think CJ Daniels can be that number one come the end of the year. He had 1,000 yards, 19.4 yards per grab, and 10 scores at Liberty last year at 480 and 11.4. At LSU, didn't do a whole lot, but I think he'll fit better in this offense. Tony Johnson, 450 and 6 scores last year at Cincinnati. He was also solid the year prior to that with 411 and 4 scores in that season. Keelan Marion's a really good special teams asset, 350 for him. And a touchdown. He also had 21 carries for 100 yards and 2 scores last year at BYU. So a bit of a gadget player. Alex Bonham, the tight end, is a really big physical asset. He had 212 and 7 scores last year, so he's a big red zone threat. I think he could be really solid for this team. They bring back Lofton, the tight end, who had 9 grabs for 150 yards and a score as well. So some solid versatility and depth in the tight end room. I like what they have here. Overall, this is a pretty solid pass catching group. Certainly better than the group that Beck had to deal with at Georgia, that is, in my opinion. I think this is a group that can certainly develop throughout the season.
Yeah, now we look at the running back room, led by Mark Fletcher. He's going to step into that running back one role. Physical bruiser who was efficient all season long. Jordan Lyle, he's a true freshman last year who had a handful of very explosive runs. He's going to be a playmaker for him this fall. Also picked up Sharmar Brown, coming off a phenomenal year for North Dakota State, 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's 5'11", 214. Another great room for the Canes. The run game was very complimentary last year, 188 yards per contest on the ground. At times they went a little cold. They weren't all that good against Duke or Georgia Tech. And, other than that, though, there wasn't many blemishes. This offense seems pretty complete, Nick, because this is also a very deep part of their offense.
Yeah, very deep. Mark Fletcher is really solid. 600 yards rushing for him, 5.4 and 9 scores. A pretty solid number there. Jordan Lyle was not bad, 400 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, and 4 scores for him as well. They added a key piece from North Dakota State. I think it's a very intriguing add in Sharmar Brown, who I think could be really solid for this team as well. Overall, I like what they have. I think this rushing game should be solid. I mean, 31st in the nation, just under 200 yards per game is really solid considering how much you were airing it out, being nearly at 350 yards per game through the air. It was good balance. It was complimentary, and I like what they have. It should be a strong unit again this year.
Let's move to the offensive line for the Hurricanes. Markel Bell was a quality starter at left tackle in his first year after coming over from community college at 6'9", 340. Had good games, also had some very poor efforts late in the season. Should really ascend this fall, though. Matthew McCoy is going to return at left guard. He was really good in pass pro. Less notable in the run game, though. Center is going to be James Brockmeyer. He was elite for TCU this past season, only having really one poor game in pass protection all year long. The right side is going to return both starters and guard Inez Cooper. He was inconsistent, but he is a veteran of the program, and of course a superstar at tackle, Francis Malgoa, who was great in the run game, allowed only 1 sack. After 2 years of starting, he should have really molded into the top player in the country at his position. Offensive line's very good, Nick. Very nice size, very good coaching of Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal. They've been doing this together for a long time. This is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I think Muaga's a really talented player, one of the best offensive tackles in the nation. He should be really good on that right side. Brockmeyer should develop into a solid center when it's all said and done for this team. A nice Cooper, same deal at right guard. I think the left side's a little bit weak. I think Bell and Rodriguez certainly have their deficiencies, but Bell could develop into a solid tackle come the end of the season. Overall, still a pretty strong offensive line, one of the better ones in the conference, and rounds out what is an A-plus unit on offense.
A-plus for me. Looking at the verdict here, Hurricanes lose Cam Ward and a lot of his pass catchers, but they reload as good as anyone in FBS. The offensive line, with their experience, is a big reason why. I think if focused, Beck is going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country, as he's got a phenomenal wide receiver group, and I think he should be motivated to deliver. And overall, I think it's an incredibly deep supporting cast. They're going to remain at the top in terms of production. I think they can beat anyone in the country with this group. Now you move to the defensive side of the ball. Why did they not compete for a national title? Is because of these guys. No other way to put it, Nick. I mean, they were forced to compete in a shootout every single week. The numbers are badly skewed. On screen, they don't look too bad. And if you didn't watch Miami last year, they're like, how did they not accomplish more? Well, it's because the 3 losses they had, they allowed, on average, 421 yards per game and 37 points per game. They also allowed 30-plus points and 4 victories as well. So the numbers are skewed. They teed off early on in the year against Florida A&M, Ball State. A bunch of nobodies, right, to run up these numbers. And in conference player, they're just abysmal. And they do return 5 starters. They also have an incredibly deep defensive line. Ruben Bain leads the way. He was banged up last year, but was a full go in the back half of this season. He was tremendous. He was very good versus the run. Efficient pass rusher. Didn't put up great production, though, compared to 2023. Akeem Mesidor has been tremendous in his 2 healthy seasons for Miami. Was the top pass rusher last season, along with 9 tackles for loss. Very good run defender, missing only 3 tackles. These two should form one of the best edge duos in America. Armando Blunt, a true sophomore, is the 39th ranked player in last year's class, noted for having great bend of twitch, size and power with great heavy hands. Marquise Lightfoot, he was a top 40 player in last year's class, so a highly talented edge group. I'll go ahead and give you the interior group here in a moment, Nick. Just kind of what are your thoughts on this edge group and how bad the defense was last year? It's a lot of notes, so I'm going to let you go ahead and chip in real quick.
Yeah, the defense was brutal last year, right? It was just an atrocious unit that struggled in some of those key games against those top opponents. You highlighted some of those big losses. I mean, the Syracuse game, they lost a 42-38 shootout to be eliminated from the playoffs. I mean, they just could not get off the field in that one. They struggled against bad teams. I mean, give up 38 points to Cal, 34 points to Virginia Tech. Just unacceptable numbers, really, when you think about it. They gave up even giving up 14 points to Florida State was pretty bad. I got to be honest with you. That Florida State offense was brutal last year. 45, at Louisville in a win there. That's a ton of points to give up as well. 31 against Duke. I mean, they were just giving up points after points. You saw it in the loss in the bowl game as well. I think that was a perfect description of the season. They just could not get off the field in that game either, losing 42-41. So brutal across the board here, but I do like what they return. I think they have a lot of skill, particularly coming off the edge. It starts with Akeem Mesidor, who's a phenomenal player. 32 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. He should be great this year. Ruben Bain was really solid when he was getting back to his full health, 23 total tackles, 6 sacks for loss, 3.5 sacks. If he's fully healthy, I think he'd be really good coming off that edge. Marquise Lightfoot will certainly find a way to be involved and get some pressure, as will Armando Blunt, who I think are really solid. Malik Bryant's another good veteran further down the depth chart. This pass rushing group is going to be strong. This is a great 2-headed monster up top with Bain and Mesidor, who should be able to put a lot of pressure early on the quarterback and create some opportunities to get some negative plays.
Now I look at the interior defensive line. Ahmad Moten was a really good player, nearly 300 snaps. Pretty good run defender and solid pass rusher for being 325 pounds. Justin Scott was pretty good in his 100-plus snaps in his freshman season. A 300-pounder who was an X5-star in last year's class with good length and strength. David Blay was a great add from LA Tech, 6'4", 303 pounds, had 10 TFL, 6.5 sacks last year. Artavis Jones, a top 250 recruit in the class of 24, and then Donta Simpson, an incoming 3-star, round out the depth, which is somewhat limited, but a nice talented group across the board. I think it's an elite defensive line on paper. They also get back with Malik Bryant, who had 5 tackles for loss early on in the year. Again, on paper, Nick, last year it was also gold, but they didn't turn in much. And that's the biggest thing here. We got to get Corey Heatherman's got to get these guys in sync. They should be performing a lot better, and they need to lead the way.
Ahmed Moten's a really talented player, but he's got to step up and find a way to get more of that untapped potential out of him. 18 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack, 2 pass breakups. He's got to be better this year. Same deal with Justin Scott, who's a younger guy on the roster. 7 total tackles for him last year, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack. He's got to be better as well. He's got to find a way to step up and get himself involved on the interior. I know he's a true freshman last year, so certainly expecting a lot from him in year 2. David Bly, coming over from Louisiana Tech, was a pretty solid add. 46 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 2 QB hurries. He's a big physical asset in the interior, 6'4", 300 pounds. I'm curious to see what he looks like. Donta Simpson coming in as a true freshman. They're going to rely on him and get some reps flipping in for Scott here and there. Definitely I worry about some of the depth on that interior defensive line. I think it's certainly weak, but overall I still think this is a strong defensive line. It's got a great edge rushing unit, and they should be able to put some nice pressure on the quarterback.
Now I move to the middle of this defense. We talked about them last year. We weren't all that high, and I'm certainly not as high in this group this year either, but I definitely think they have a great leader in Wesley Basante, who has emerged as a greatly consistent player of his run-stopping and coverage abilities. We'd really like to see his production, though, double across the board, as he's going to be the new alpha dog in the middle. Raul Agori Jr., likely to be a starter after being pretty solid in his near 200 snaps last year. Jalen Alderman, he also saw 200-plus reps mostly in the middle part of the year. It was respectable. He did start back for Louisville in 2023, so he is capable of taking on a bigger workload and being effective. Kamal Bonner, he was an average player for NC State last season at nearly 500 snaps. You have second-year guys Cam Pruitt and Adarius Hayes. Both played sparingly, but depth at linebacker much better than it was a season ago. What do you think of this linebacking group for Miami, Nick? Which I definitely think is the weakness of this defense, but on paper, again, they're incredibly talented, so that's not much of a slouch.
There is some talent here, certainly, if they can get to their full level of potential. I keep saying that with Miami defense. A lot of potential, but they got to find a way to get to that potential. Bizante is a really solid player. 59 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a pick, and a pass breakup for him. Aguilar Jr., I thought was solid as well. 27 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery. In his limited appearance, I think he could be really solid. They bring in Mohamed Toure coming over from Rutgers. That was a phenomenal ad, right? 93 total tackles for Toure last year, 9.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 4 QB hurries. He should be really solid for this team. They bring in Kamal Bonner as well from NC State. He had 56 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 6 QB hurries. So I like the 2 ads there. Overall, I think this unit got a little bit better. Cam Pruitt's a younger player for the depth chart that should get some reps this year as well. I do think this unit will be better. I still think it's the weakest part of this defense, but I like what they're having here. I think they got some good leadership. Return 2 solid starters and add a couple different pieces here and there as well. Could be a strong linebacking unit. I just got to wait and see here. I'm a little still, not super confident in them. I want to see how they develop throughout the season.
Yeah, I apologize for mentioning our Darius Hayes might not be available this year following a tragic car crash months ago. Was just recently released from the hospital, so sorry for that there. Moving to the secondary for Miami, this was also a very weak group for them, but I definitely like what they did in the portal, and I think they can certainly ascend. As the only guy they really returned, O.J. Frederique, who was really good as a true freshman, did work versus the run, was sturdy in coverage as well. They bring in Ethan O'Connor. He was a tremendous starter for Wazoo last season, allowing over 20 yards only once over the final 6 games. Xavier Lucas was really good, 200 snaps for Wisconsin last year. Damari Brown only played a few games last season for the Canes. He'll be in the rotation. Slot picks up a tremendous guy, Keontae Scott, who was good in 3 years for Auburn as a starter. Was inconsistent last season, but he can play really good ball, especially at a high level at a very talented conference. Charles Brantley, he finally came around for Michigan State after 4 years. He was elite in doing so. He was strong in all areas, so they have nice veteran options in the slot. Happy with the corner group, added some good players. They also do have Josias Richard coming back, but he was pretty poor in 2024. The safety group, they snagged Jacob Thomas, who's been an average coverage performer in his career at Middle Tennessee and regular Tennessee. Markeith Williams and Daniel Day return after playing sparingly and being less than desirable. And of course, the headline they picked up was Zachariah Posner from Jack State. Versatile player. He played more deep safety late in the year for the Gamecocks, but lots of box and slot as well. Lots of ball production. He's an athletic player who fires downhill. Great playmaker overall. I think this guy's going to be tremendous for Miami, Nick, and I think some of the guys that picked up in the portal are going to do wonders for them this year. How much growth are you expecting?
They revamped the unit through the portal. I don't really love necessarily doing that. I think it's sort of a risky move here, but this secondary struggled at times last year, giving up over 200 yards per game, 57th in the nation. I like some of the ads, though. I like some of the pieces. They bring back Federique, who was solid as a true freshman last year, the only guy they really returned of note. He had 30 total tackles, a tackle for loss, a pick, 7 pass breakups. Markeith Williams was okay at times, but I want to see a lot more out of him. 13 total tackles for him for this team last year. You look at the portal ads, some interesting names. Jacoby Thomas, he was previously at Middle Tennessee and the University of Tennessee. He was solid in 2023, 71 total tackles. Had certainly a down year in 2024, 22 tackles. He had 2 pass breakups, 24, 5 in 2023. Not a bad coverage asset there. They bring in Zachariah Posner from Jacksonville State, a great ad. 3 picks, 8 pass breakups, 75 tackles. A lot to love there. He's a really talented player you bring in. Xavier Lucas was okay at Wisconsin at times. 2 pass breakups, a pick, 18 total tackles for him. They're hoping he can develop. Keontae Scott has shown some in flashes. Certainly his 2023 was strong at Auburn. 5 pass breakups, 44 total tackles. He wants to play at the level, had a pretty bad 2024. Ethan O'Connor was not bad at Washington State. 8 pass breakups, 4 picks, including a touchdown there. 32 total tackles. O'Connor should fight for a starting role. And then Charles Brantley had 7 pass breakups, 3 picks, and 27 total tackles at Michigan State to round out what was a pretty loaded class across the board. They're going to mix and match. They're going to plug some different guys in here. Curious to see who will get the starting nod at the end of the day. Probably going to be Federique and O'Connor. I think, like you listed there, is a pretty good shout. Although I would not be surprised if Xavier Lucas finds a way to get involved as a starter on this secondary unit. Overall, they added some interesting pieces here that can certainly increase a unit that was really weak at times last year. I'm keeping an eye on how this unit develops here. If they continue to get gashed, though, it could put this team in a bad spot.
Looking at the defensive verdict, the Hurricanes defense costed this team a chance at a national title, and Ward probably could have won them a chip, but this group was just slightly better. Miami is as deep as they come in terms of talent. Depth on the D-line is phenomenal. They're elite in that regard. A more well-established linebacking group and a retooled secondary might just be the key to them marching forward. I think they can accomplish a lot of what they have up front. If we can cover better, this group will be tough to consistently move the ball against. They should improve. They definitely will improve. To what degree remains to be seen. B+ for me. Moving to the schedule and the prediction for Miami. This offseason, Nick, not many people have talked about the Hurricanes. They haven't talked about how good this roster is. They haven't talked about the new addition to the coaching staff. They haven't talked about Carson Beck. This team is a sleeping giant if I've ever seen one. And maybe that's where Miami could thrive this year, is with no one talking about them compared to most years where, every offseason, Miami, USC, teams like that are always the hype, and they fail to deliver. I think Miami can accomplish a lot, and I know I see them fall forward every year. Last year, they were a very good team, though, Nick, and they would have went far in the playoffs. They ended up losing to some good teams late in the year that costed them an opportunity, so I'm not going to give them too much flack on that, even though it's consistent with this program. I think they beat Notre Dame week 1. I think they're going to be able to take advantage of that man coverage that Notre Dame wants to play. Irish will also be breaking in a new quarterback for the year. I think the defense is going to start to play up to a better level, and I think this offense is going to stay highly productive with Beck and a deep supporting cast that, of course, has that phenomenal offensive line. Miami will be in the playoff for me. I see them facing off against Clemson in the ACC title game. What's your expectation for this team? I know you're not always that high on them, and I think you're going to stay that way, but I love to see this team compete, and I think they're going to do that this year.
Yeah, I'm not high on Miami because I've been burned by them in the past. I got burned by them last year. I got burned by them the year before that. I feel like it's always a team that gets a lot of hype. You made a very good point there. You're right in that regard. This is a team that gets so much hype every single year, and then they fail to impress in certain situations, and they really do find a way to disappoint you when it matters most. This is still a very talented team. I have them at 9-3 right now, but I think they could find a way to get through and really end up being a strong team come the end of the season. I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame week 1. I think that's just a better team on paper. I think I like what Notre Dame has and can get the job done. I agree they'll lose to Florida as well, and have them losing to SMU as my other loss, a tricky road game on November 1st. This is a very talented team, right? There's no sugarcoating that. The offense is absolutely dynamite. There's incredibly talented pieces. I think Beck will have a great season. I'm buying in on Beck here. I think this will be a really good environment for him to step up and be strong. The defense I'm still a little concerned about. I think the defensive line is great. I think the linebacking core has some nice pieces that can certainly play better. The secondary is a revamped unit that is boom or bust, but I'm on the side of caution here. I think there are some concerns for me. I don't know if I trust Mario Cristobal as a coach. He's found a way to do less with more, it feels like, in Miami. Going 7-6 in 2023, losing to Rutgers in a Pinstripe Bowl. That wasn't good. Last year's team should have been the playoffs. They failed to make the playoffs, and then the bowl game, they lost a shootout with Iowa State of all teams overall, and that game was weird because Cam Ward played the first half, then he didn't. There was some weird stuff going on there. I question some of his coaching in clutch situations. I question his ability to kind of develop and get talent fully focused on the key games. They struggled upstate against Syracuse last year, and what was ultimately the game that they ended up missing the playoff in. The defense will improve. Just how much of an improvement? I think it has to be a pretty large improvement to get this team in the playoffs, and I'm just not seeing them getting that much level here. 9-3 for me. I still think it's a good season, but it's not quite what Miami fans want. This team can certainly get to the playoffs. I'm just not going to put my chips on the table in that regard. A talented roster, but I can't make that next step there. A wait-and-see approach from me. I'm certainly holding out. I won't be surprised to make the playoffs, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now it's going to happen. The schedule's got some tough road games on there, some tough home games as well, and I just don't think the defense is up to par exactly to compete with the big dogs in college football.
Now I'll ask you, do you think there's any bragging rights for me if I get this right on Miami? Because it's like, how many times can you pick the same thing before it finally happens and still claim to be right,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of credit because you have picked this team multiple years in a row, and I don't blame you. Every year there's a lot of hype for good reasons, but I just continue to see through the hype. Again, if they go and make the playoffs, I'll be impressed, and I'll give them their credit when credit is due. But right now, I'm holding off, and I just cannot pull the trigger on that.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.